Obviously, the Academy Awards last night, and our boy Timothy Chalamet, who gave the incredible speech last week, who should have won, did not win. I know we're disappointed by that. Our boy Timmy. Ben Stiller, while at the Oscars right now, he's kind of all over the media because he's directing Severance, one of the hottest shows right now. And from the Academy Awards, sitting in the theater there, he tweeted Knicks win, and somebody quote tweeted him and said, "I'm crying, bro. You're at the Oscars right now." And this made me think here, you guys, of what is more important or influential in society. Is it movies and television and those stories that are told there, or is it sports and is it the athletes that we see on the court and on the field?
Okay, movies and stories are so important for escaping your problems, for giving you some inspiration and refueling you when you're dealing with your life and you need that reprieve. Sports, on the other hand, are helping you inspire you to power through your problems and to achieve through adversity. Okay, so one's escapism and one is motivation, I think.
Oh, first of all,
Yeah,
Mike, unbelievable use of the word reprieve. I've never seen you pull a vocab. You've been hanging out with Scott way too long.
I
Now,
know. Scott, it's working. It's working.
unbelievable, unbelievable vocab.
Pretty
Subliminal
good for a guy
messaging.
living in a van.
Didn't even go to Yale and he lives in a van. He said reprieve. Scott, what's your rebuttal to that?
Oh man, give me a second to collect myself here after that answer. But okay, I would say Mikey's definitely right. So sports is a real world manifestation of exactly what we're all searching for when we go and watch movies, right? So movies, books, narratives, stories, novels, all that kind of stuff. That is like a very relatable simulation of many things mankind has experienced throughout life. So like people find the reprieve in going into those stories, but they're also able to experience a life or a world or a scenario or a story that is potentially what they could encounter in the future. So it's a simulation of like maybe putting themselves in that role, and maybe they can see themselves in that situation at some point in their life, and they can see how that character acts within it, and maybe they can help find a way to maybe navigate that scenario if they find themselves in it. So I think ultimately that's what people are doing when they're watching movies and stories. And obviously there are deep undertones and elements that are, we talk about stereotypes and the archetypal stereotypes, and that's what's ingrained in those stories. But sports is a physical manifestation of that, and people actually living it out in handling that adversity in real time. So I think that's why people are so drawn to sports.
Yeah. Like what you said right there. I mean, it is sort of and Mikey, I think you were saying this and I want to ask you, what's more inspiring, the actor or the athlete? And the actor is pretending. Granted, we are getting value from the performance and from the movie, and you can learn things and you can feel all sorts of range of emotion and be inspired. But what the person is doing on a basketball court or a football field or a hockey rink, that's actually them accomplishing that. You can pull that motivation and inspiration directly from that, and it's actually real. I wonder, what do you guys think is more unifying? So like, let's take for example like a global phenomenon in the sports world and in the film and movie world. So let's go Michael Jordan. I know we always talk about Michael Jordan, but he's kind of unprecedented when it comes to international global phenomenon. And you got little kids in New York and in Portland and in China and in South America who have Michael Jordan jerseys and love Michael Jordan. But then you also have, say, for example, something like Star Wars, which is also a global phenomenon. And this is broadly reaching throughout all sorts of different people as well. And it has its messaging and its inspiration. But which of these do you think adds more value or is more unifying?
When done right, absolutely storytelling, movies, books, all of that, because it can span across a multitude of interests and everybody can connect to it, regardless of you being a sports fan or not. So like half the world isn't bothered by sports because they have so many problems in their life that they're already trying to attack and overcome, that sports is just like a luxury sort of side thing that they can maybe enjoy if they have the time, or even if they have the technological capabilities of connecting or plugging into sports. So like, I think storytelling is far deeper, but it has to be done right in order to reach those depths. I think in America, because we've experienced probably a dearth of good content within Hollywood, specifically over the past, call it 15 years. I mean, there really haven't been all encompassing touching stories made.
It's
And
been
I think sports is now starting to like overcome that because so many people are plugging in. You got the Swifties finally entering into the fray and into the fold of sports world and all that kind of stuff. So there's an opening there for sports, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I think. It is more relatable, at least in the States right now. Sports has become, we've seen kind of movies lack, for the most part, we've seen movies in the recent decade and a half really lack some of those unifying messages or things that like everyone can get behind. And when you do get a movie like that, everyone's like, oh, it was like Top Gun Maverick last year, 2
Yeah.
years ago, whatever it was. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
look, it's not political. It's pretty unifying. They didn't even like name the bad guy in the movie. So it was like, hey, this is for
We
everybody.
all knew. We
Okay,
all knew.
well, we don't know. It could have been one of 6 countries. Okay. Neither here nor
Nondescript.
there. But it is rare. Whereas in sports, there's so many of these stories, and you see like the inspirational underdog athlete or stuff like that. But also a way to with stories to kind of escape your problems. It is a great way of doing that. But I just wanted to hit on that since the Oscars were last night. Sorry, Timothy Chalamet, for not getting that Oscar. Maybe next year, brother. But you know who is going to probably want to watch a movie or a TV show to escape his problems pretty soon here? It's going to be Will Howard. Big news that Shedeur Sanders, one of the top quarterbacks, decided not to participate in this throwing drills at the combine. And a lot of people harped on that. We spoke about it last week. Will Howard put on what some people are calling an all-time bad performance at the combine right here. We're letting this run, some of these clips. If you're just listening, he's just overthrowing receivers, underthrowing, throwing behind. Scott, thoughts on this? How disastrous is this? And just what I mean, you've participated in some of these kind of throwing drills, these camp situations. What's the deal here?
Bro, I feel so badly for Will in this moment. There are a lot of elements to why, say, Shedeur decided not to throw or participate in the combine outside of the interviews, right? You could say, oh, it was because of Shiloh. He didn't get an invitation and it was like in solidarity with his brother and so on and so forth. Or it could have been, hey, I don't want to expose myself in the potential, even though I know I'm the man, the potential that I have a poor performance like this.
Sure.
So like I don't know if that's the case, but all in all, like Will was in a moment where he's really trying to increase his draft stock, which is wild after the year that he had. This did a massive disservice, I think, which is unfortunate because I think he's a solid player and a solid opportunity for a lot of different teams. But it goes back to what you were talking about, Nick, I think 2 episodes ago, where you were asking, hey, is it a problem that you're not on the same page with a lot of these receivers? And the big question mark is, hey, could this have been all about Will, or was this also on the timing and the abilities of those receivers who are out there running routes as well? Like, could a lot of the fault fall on them in terms of how they ran those routes? And did it throw Will off because he's so used to throwing to like top-notch dudes who will be first-round draft picks?
That is what I'm wondering. And this to me makes a lot of sense and is a great example of why Shedeur didn't want to participate, because I mean, dude, you don't know these wide receivers, and these wide receivers also, they are trying to put on a show. They're probably just trying to run as fast as they can and be impressive in how they run their routes and not necessarily caring about the timing with the quarterback. And so it kind of can become a show here.
So, when the casual fan is watching a game, right, and there's an errant throw or something along those lines, all the blame is tossed onto the quarterback when they actually don't know the intricacies of what, one, the play call was, what the read was from that receiver or the quarterback based on the defense, and then 3, if there was an audible called or anything and it just wasn't heard. So like there are so many other factors that go into, say, an errant throw, and it doesn't always fall on the quarterback. And that's why I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we don't really know. It's easy to watch this and be like, oh, they're not connecting. That looks like an overthrow or an underthrow. Will Howard did not perform well. His draft stock is kind of plummeting. Interesting point here. It's an interesting thing when you look at some of the quarterbacks, or a good handful of the quarterbacks that have success in the NFL. And okay, there's some of them that come from like the premier, the Alabamas, the LSUs, but there's also a lot of quarterbacks that come from kind of less than ideal college scenarios, like Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff coming from Cal, Mahomes coming from like Texas Tech, Josh Allen coming from Wyoming, Lamar Jackson coming from Louisville. And it's like, I think that this can kind of play into their they're dealing with adversity. When you're at Ohio State, you're throwing the ball 7 yards to a 5-star wide receiver. he's catching, he's taking off, and he's going and scoring a touchdown. Whereas if you're Josh Allen at Wyoming, you're having to make a lot of stuff happen. You're having to deal with a lot of adversity. You're probably playing with 2-star recruit wide receivers and offensive linemen. So you're dealing with all that. And those guys that now we look at like the pinnacle, the quarterbacks in the NFL, those are guys that had to deal with adversity in college. So I wonder if being on such a good team in college is not great.
There's a nugget of truth, I think, within what you're saying. And I think we've seen a lot of that happen within the NFL and people rising to the ranks. I mean, shoot, even though he was physically gifted beyond belief, you have Jamarcus Russell back in the day. He got into the league, and all of a sudden things just fell off. And that's obviously there was a product of his mental preparation falling by the wayside and relying too much on the physical. But at the same time, he's a great example of that. And then, frankly, a lot of, and this is just the narrative out there because it's based in fact, the narrative of Ohio State quarterbacks coming into the league, save for CJ Stroud, and underperforming, it's been an actual problem for that pipeline. So like there is some truth to this, but I think it all falls on the individual and how they prepare and how they go about understanding the need and expectation when you enter into the NFL and how high that is.
Yeah. Mike, when you think back to your guys' pro day, did anybody have any subpar performances or anything like this? Like, how much weight do we want to put on these?
He didn't.
Not Mikey.
Not me. I always rise to the occasion. There were some guys that really had some poor performances. I don't want to name their names, but like there's some tough 40s, some tough jumps, and things that really it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
But my question is like, so for this guy, how much does this really affect his draft stock? Like, what do you think? How far would he fall from this performance?
I don't know, Mike.
And how are his testing numbers? Did he test well physically? And if his testing numbers, his athleticism show it's there, and maybe they can write off this performance a little bit more. But how far will he fall?
Yeah, I was trying to look that up actually, like where he was projected at before this, and where they're like, talking about now. If one of you guys,
I think it was like third round was what I had been hearing for most of the time, third to fifth round. But at the same time, it's a good question. Like, how else did he test? But I don't know if it's like as important as other positions.
I would say it's probably the least important for quarterback. Maybe kicker. Speaking of those positions, because we were talking about Cam Scatabo from Arizona State a few episodes ago, back when they had the bowl game.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, is he fast? Is he actually athletic? How's he going to do in the NFL? I was checking it out. So he got invited to the combine. He only participated in the jumps, but he performed really well. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think he broad jumped like a 10.6, and his vertical was maybe high 30s or something like that. So it was impressive numbers for those jumps, but he did abstain from running the 40, which I think is smart. I mean, it's probably just only can hurt him.
Yeah, but I just like when guys do that, especially for running back receiver, it's just like, all right, well, what are you hiding? That's the only thing that could
what's worse
be interpreted.
What's worse? Hiding or not, or like leaving a cloud of mystery, or running a 4.81 40? What would you rather have?
I know. I agree. I know it's smart, but like people, when you don't do it, people are going to assume the worst. People go, okay,
it's natural.
Yeah, that's fair. We like to assume the worst. So back with Will Howard here, Shadur Sanders tweeted in support of him and says, I don't understand why y'all are hating on Will Howard. He just won a natty. It's hard to throw to wide receivers that you don't know. Everyone runs routes differently. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think this is probably precisely what went into his decision to not do it. And, we're seeing kind of the worst case scenario for a bad performance at the draft. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Do you think this guy even has the potential to be an NFL starter, or are we wasting breath on a career backup here, if that?
Yeah, no, I think he has a chance. He has like the size, the strength. He showed it, as Shadur said there in the tweet. He showed it in his run up to winning the national championship. And he was throwing to great receivers and all that, but it's not as though he's going to be throwing to bums in the NFL. It's like anybody in the NFL is going to be legit and way better than anybody he threw to in college. So I think he has the opportunity and the potential. And going back to what you were saying earlier, yes, there could be an element of him throwing to high caliber guys and just having them make up for a lot of the probably poor throws or anything along those lines with him at Ohio State. But the majority of his college career was at Kansas State. And not that Kansas State is a bum program or anything like that. It's top 25, perennial top 25 team. And they have some serious talent. But it wasn't like he was throwing to a Smith every single time.
Back in the news again, Mike, your favorite segment. It's becoming a weekly or bi-monthly segment. Cam Newton. Cam Newton acting crazy, so we're going to throw this up here.
How many rings you got? 9!
I got a question.
You have the same amount.
And no, but we don't got the same bank account.
Okay, so for those who
Oh my gosh.
understand,
That's pathetic.
who couldn't understand, he came over. The kids were kind of chirping him a bit and said, hell, how many rings do you have, Cam? Cam came over and engaged, said, none, the same amount as you. And then Cam said, no, but we don't have the same bank accounts. And then he proceeded to do the gesture that we all saw there. So, guys, Mikey, your favorite player, come to his defense.
Now, this is the type of player kids should be looking up to. That's how you handle yourself in public. No one is less deserving of a platform than Cam right now. How are you going to act like that to kids? It's the most immature thing. And then to do that gesture on top of it, what are you in 5th grade? Flexing your bank account? That's insane. How insecure do you have to be to fall into that trap? And then getting it caught on video. How do you recover from that? What do your friends say? How do you show up to work the next day? Hey, I saw the video of you doing that to the kids. Everything okay?
Everything okay?
So it's just unbelievable. This guy just is. I mean, we've brought it up. Like at some point, we've got to give credibility to the theory that he is purposely just trolling, so that guys like us will talk about him, because like that is the behavior of a 13-year-old boy who's trying to impress the other 13-year-old boys because the girls are around. Like,
yeah.
God, what do you make of it? What do you make of it?
It worked, but I grew out of it.
It worked. Well, he does have 8 children with 3 different women.
He has 8 kids.
Yeah,
he's a father, and he's doing that.
He's a father of 8 with 3 different mothers. Oh, so, Scott, what's your take there?
Man, you guys are covering a lot of my bases here.
I have a theory here. Tell me what you guys think about this. That he is just desperate for attention and validation or something, as he sees some of these younger quarterbacks have kind of the career that he feels like he should have had it. Granted, I know he won an MVP, but he never won a Super Bowl, and he's spoken about wanting to have that. And then we're seeing some of these younger quarterbacks who are dual threat quarterbacks, which is what he was, seeing them have more success than him. And he almost, to me, it feels like he didn't live up all the way to his potential when it comes to like getting that trophy. And now he's acting crazy, trying to stay on top of the news. What do you guys think? Think that's fair? Or
yeah, I think you could look at like a Lamar Jackson and have some envy in him. And I think it's
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Yeah. Most recently. But I would say Lamar, just strictly because he was, at least in that time, one of the very formidable running quarterbacks in the game and everything like that. So he sees Lamar, and he probably sees Lamar having, in his organization, having some weapons that Cam says that he probably didn't have. You know, we saw the clip where he was talking to Travis Hunter about how he entered into a locker room full of losers. And that's absurd to say and wildly disrespectful for the NFL vets that were in that locker room beforehand. But then it's also like, dude, you literally had Christian McCaffrey, which he's been at the top of the league ever since he entered into the NFL.
Just throw the check down and you're fine. That's it. Throw the check down, Super Bowl. Oops.
Easy 5.3 yards every time he touches the ball.
Sorry, Christian. Apparently, Cam thinks you're a loser. All right. Speaking of, so that's enough on Cam Newton until he does his new antics, in which we will discuss it next week, I'm sure. Speaking of Travis Hunter, let's take a look here as the draft is getting closer now after the combine. Mel Kiper, obviously. One of the biggest mock draft guys here. Here's his latest mock draft. We do have to keep in mind this is still before the combine finished.
No.
So we've got these here. And speaking of Travis Hunter, he's got him going third to the New York Giants. Now I want to bounce back and forth between this here and Scott. You're hanging your head right now at the choice of Cam Ward to the Browns. I see. Do you not like that?
Look, it's nothing against Cam Ward because I think he's a great player, but we can't fall into this trap of always going for the shiniest object in every draft, dude. This is absurd. Go for Travis Hunter, get somebody who can play multiple positions. That will help you in so many different ways than just strictly a rookie quarterback who you don't know will perform. Like the Travis Hunter element there is like, yeah, he may be to a lesser degree of a wide receiver in the NFL, but at the same time, he's of such a high quality athlete that he could be absolutely plugged into multiple scenarios almost immediately. We need something now. We need a shot of epinephrine or something within the organization. And there are too many other older veteran quarterbacks who we should probably look to first to lean on and get in this offseason to really shore up the quarterback room and the offense in that way, shape, or form. And then get somebody like a Travis Hunter first and foremost. That's just, I mean, if Abdul Carter is not selected, like one of those two guys need to be our second pick.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear true analysts talk about this draft, there are two elite level talents in this draft, and it's Abdul Carter and it's Travis Hunter. Those are like the two kind of generational talents you're talking about. The rest of these guys, like, there's a few solid first round picks, and then once you get past like 8 or 9 or 10, it's like kind of a jumble. I mean, it's not an incredible draft here. I want to throw this up because this is interesting. This guy here was at the combine, this reporter. He says, here are a few rumors that I was told at the combine. Giants and Jets are both actively trying to move up to the first overall. Giants are more likely to do it. Matthew Golden will be the first wide receiver taken off the board. Shedeur Sanders is slipping 6 overall to the Raiders, the earliest he could go. That's interesting as he's shown a lot of kind of desire to go to New York. Running backs, Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, and Travion Henderson will be selected earlier than expected. That's interesting as we always think about running backs kind of sort of being a dime a dozen here, but this is a great running back class, actually. And there's a few others here. I mean, we can go down all of these, but any of these jump out or excite you or worry you guys here?
Worry? Oh man. No, but we were just talking about Shedeur Sanders right at the top here, and like this comment that he's slipping or the rumor that he's slipping, could that be because he decided not to throw? That's a big question mark. Like, is it actually decreasing the interest of some of those teams because it's like, okay, this guy already thinks his stuff doesn't stink and maybe we don't want that in the locker room, so on and so forth. I don't know. That's just conjecture there. But at the same time, there's some credence to at least throwing that idea out there. I think what's really interesting here is the Giants and Jets both trying to move up as much as possible. And I wonder if it's strictly for Cam, because we see this every draft year. Yep. There's somebody that becomes the lead horse in the stable that everybody wants to move up to get. And I wonder if this is a little smoke and mirrors. So
there is a theory. And Scott, would you like to explain it before, or maybe let me play these videos real quick and then we'll give you guys some context.
Currently that you try to emulate your game after?
I wouldn't say emulate. I like to watch tape on them though.
Yeah?
I would say Pat Mahomes for sure and Aaron Rodgers. Those are my top 2 guys I like to watch tape on.
So Cam Ward saying that he likes to watch or he emulates Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Cam Ward. And then Malik Neighbors, who's one of his favorite wide receivers.
Devontae Adams, and I'm gonna say Jamar Chase.
What do you like about Devontae? What do you like about Devontae Adams' game?
He has a plan when he goes to the line of scrimmage. He gets open pretty good. His routes, he can make a DB think it's another route, and I like that about him. Because you need that creativity in the NFL.
So We have got a little bit of a conspiracy here going on with those two facts that those two guys have expressed in those interviews. The theory is we've just seen also and heard the rumors that the Giants are actively working to move up. So here's the conspiracy. They trade up with the Titans and draft Cam Ward as the number 1 pick. They trade/sign both Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, both two guys who want to leave the Jets together and still want to play together. And these two guys mentor the younger guys, Aaron Rodgers to Cam and Devontae Adams to Malik Neighbors. Kind of wild, but not that crazy. Could actually, with how the things are shaking out now, and I know that the New York Giants were interested in Matthew Stafford. Well, that's closed now. Aaron Rodgers is the other vet quarterback really on the market there. There's something to that. What are your guys' thoughts?
Most of the time, there are a lot of conspiracies and ideas and stuff that start circulating at this point in time. But this one actually has some legs because, look, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, while Daboll has won Super Bowls as a coach before, not as a head coach, but as a coach before, he has a good resume. I think Joe Shane is at Hail Mary mode right now. We've talked about that before. They're both on the very, very piping hot seat with the New York Giants this year, and they need to win now. But at the same time, if you infuse, because they have a guy like Malik Neighbors in their locker room already, like he's going to be a very solid talent. If you can get a guy like a Devontae Adams in there to help mentor him and also bolster your offense so that you have future success to build upon, I think they're going to seriously pursue that. And if you can get a guy like Aaron Rodgers in your locker room and on your behind center, why would you not? Especially when you literally have 0 quarterbacks on your roster right now.
I know, dude. Also, that'd be great for Aaron. He wouldn't have to sell his house. Just have to just ever so slightly. I know he's want that. Yeah.
One thing I like what Cam Ward said, is he made a point to say not emulate. I'm not trying to emulate anybody, but I watch tape on these guys. I think that's great. I think guys can fall into the trap, especially when they're young and coming into the league, that they're trying to be like whatever their NFL comps are, or they're trying to be, so they're not playing to their natural ability. They're not, putting what they have out there. They're just trying to be something they're not. So I think that was a good little distinguishing point that he made in that interview.
Good point. I know what you're thinking, Nick.
The worst example of this is Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, who literally tries to look like Patrick Mahomes. He gets the same haircut. He wears the same sunglasses. He has the same little chin beard thing. He tries to walk the same way. It's creepy. It's weird. And he could take some notes from Cam Ward there, who just, hey, you can be inspired by someone. Stop trying to wear their skin. What the heck is that? God, that creeps me out, you guys. I hate it.
It's really creepy.
Such a red flag for NFL franchises. Don't you think?
Seriously. Who would draft that? Oops, have your own personality.
Oh, like that is a huge red flag. You want your quarterback to be like somebody that is stable mentally and kind of people can lean on and guys can look to as a leader. And it's like, are you in a Halloween costume? Who is this guy? I mean, are we wrong?
How do you think the Cornhusker locker room views that? Because you know some dudes in there are like, yo, this is wild that you're doing this, dude.
Dude, I bet there's some guys, like some of his close friends, who are like, no, I mean, that's just his style. That's whatever. But then I think some of the guys on the team are for sure like, yo, this dude on our team dresses like a pirate. It's just like, it's the thing from Dodgeball. There's a guy on our team that dresses like a pirate. There's a guy on our team that dresses up as Patrick Mahomes.
That's what. This is why you need a little bit of bullying in the locker room. You need that to keep everybody in line. Okay.
We talked about Richie Incognito last week. This guy wouldn't be dressing up as somebody else if Richie Incognito was in there. Maybe they need that. All right, we got these last 2 hits in the NFL. Let's go. Matt Stafford is staying with the Rams, so a lot of drama was buzzing around. Maybe he leaves. He was big in conversation with the Giants. Apparently, Tom Brady was trying to recruit him to come to the Raiders, and so Stafford is staying in LA. Him and McVay are together. I mean, they were great. They were the team that gave the Super Bowl champ the best run for their money this year. I, 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 was surprised that they were talking about breaking this up even. How do you feel about this?
I think it's really creepy. I think guys can fall into the trap, especially when they're young and coming into the league, that they're trying to be like whatever their NFL comps are, or they're trying to be, so they're not playing to their natural ability. They're not, playing to their natural ability. They're not 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 playing to their natural ability.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, they really pressured the Eagles, and if it weren't for about 2 or 3 plays, I think, especially on offense, in giving up or giving Carter an ability to rush Stafford the way that he did, it opened up the floodgates for the defensive line. I think for quite some time and changed the momentum of that game. I think they could have taken down the Eagles, and it would have been a vastly different Super Bowl as we were seeing. So just the conversation circling around this, I don't know why over the past, I feel like 3 seasons, this has been a constant recurring conversation about Stafford potentially leaving. It's clear that he enjoys being coupled with McVay. He has a serious connection with Puka Nacua, and they're dominant. Right. And then Williams in the backfield had a stellar year this past year. So like offensively, they are primed to really make a push in these next few years. So it always confused me as to why he was always on the trade conversation block. And I know that has to do with a lot of dollars and cents going on, but clearly he took a pay cut for all intents and purposes of what he could have potentially gotten at different teams to stay. So like this is kind of a nothing burger in the end. Interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if the team wasn't so close and actually had a solid season, I would understand this. They were the Atlanta Falcons, and this was the Kirk Cousins situation. Yeah, move on. Like, get rid of him, get what you can. But the guy is still performing at a very high level, and it's also doubly as impressive that the LA Rams, who play in warm weather / indoors, went to Philadelphia in January and played in the snow and went toe-to-toe with that team, the team that absolutely decimated the Commanders and the Chiefs. So it's very impressive. And they're that close kind of. So I'm glad to see Stafford coming back there and them getting that worked out. This is a big one though. Deebo Samuel getting traded from the 49ers to the Commanders, who we just talked about. Commanders added this nice weapon here. This kind of an end of an era in this 49ers. Like they've had this kind of core group of guys for a long time that they made deep playoff runs, NFC Championship game wins, Super Bowl appearances. And this is kind of the first piece of that core to go. Thoughts on this one, Scott?
Yeah, I wonder what Brandon Ayuk is feeling right now, because he had been asking for, I think, 2 straight years to go to the Washington Commanders. He just sees his teammate getting shipped off and traded there. So I wonder what's coming into play there. But this is interesting. I know a lot of people are out there cheering to see, quote unquote, the downfall or the destruction of the Niners and what was their building dynasty, or what a lot of people thought it was. And I wonder if, is this really a destruction or a falling apart, or is it trimming the fat and streamlining what they got going?
It's fascinating that they're only getting a 5th round pick for him. They were just paying him over $24 million a year, and he only gets a 5th round pick. And
I always wonder how that feels when you, first of all, you get traded if you didn't want to trade. I know in like this situation, he actually has to be traded, but if you get traded and they're like, well, I hope that they at least like got some good stuff for me, and then you just got traded for a discarded 5th round pick.
This is Jackie Moon from getting traded for a washing machine.
They didn't even get a washing machine. I wonder what kind of blow that is, the secondary blow of realizing what you were worth to that organization. Like,
dude. But I think the 49ers had a lot of problems this year. It's just a down year for them in general, all the injuries, and it's just I mean, he's got a big salary. Unfortunately, did not produce to that level this year. I know he had his injuries. The dude's still a baller. He's a little bit older for like skill position type guy. I think he's 29, maybe 30. Super unique player. Like,
well, that's the question though. Is like, I think you're skirting. Why did they trade him then for a 5th rounder? They didn't grab as much capital. Was it a cap space issue? Like,
I think that's part of it. I think the cap space,
right? But it wasn't like big enough to really lean heavily in that direction. So I think there was something else going on.
Well, I would love to like pull up a comparable trade, like of a player. I don't know who we could think of who would be like a good comparison to see what
maybe Devontae
sort of draft capital was traded for him. Devontae, what they give Devontae was like third round picks, wasn't he? Or second?
Yeah,
round.
But I think he had a higher cap hit, if I remember.
Yeah, but
correctly.
Devontae is also in a tier above Deebo Samuel. Like I think that's too high. But for an aging skill position player, 5th rounder, I mean, that's, it's not a a great feeling for the ego, probably, but I don't think that they were just like, yeah, we got to get rid of him.
I think
don't
I think
that.
what would be comp here in the near future is to see what Cooper Cup goes for to another team, because he was a staple in the locker room, clearly a staple on the offense, similar to what
Yeah.
Debo was with the 49ers. So I think that would be a good comp, and it might be too soon to really parse that out.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Cooper Cup is a Triple Crown winner, though, so I don't know. It's hard to do these comparisons, but for the aging skill position players, this is always something that's kind of comes into play. So Washington Commanders bolstering up their roster. I mean, dude, they're going to be solid next year. It was a pretty big surprise that they got to where they did this year, because their roster, okay, they got a couple pieces, but the roster was not that good to go to the NFC Championship game. And they really overachieved, and now they're actually adding some pieces to where, okay, expectations are going to actually be pretty high next year for the Commanders. I want to touch on this. Texas and USC have joined Nebraska in canceling their spring games. Matt Rule was in Nebraska. They were the first ones to do it. And here is Matt Rule talking about it actually recently. Again, 40 seconds here of why they're canceling.
Our game last year was televised. A ton of people watched it. And then on Monday, there was, hey, coach, I got a call from so-and-so. I got a call from so-and-so. So it just, you think about the risk reward when we're paying players already. And then with the portal, the portal's kind of in spring, but some guys will have graduated. But, I was watching those FCS playoffs. I was watching Montana State, and, guy makes a big block. I'm like, who's that? And they're like, well, he's going here and he's going here. I mean, it's just, you're showcasing your players. And so with no contracts, the day we get contracts and the day we get some rules, I'll back off. But, I saw it firsthand last year how much it put us at risk. And I'm not really willing to do that.
What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about more and more schools, big time schools too, kind of leaders in the college football world, going this direction and canceling the spring game?
I think that you have to do it because it's becoming more and more like a business. And like he said, until you get contracts, all you're doing is advertising what you have for other people to pick up. You're still doing spring ball. You're still getting the value internally. And the spring game is kind of like the cap on that progress. But right now it's more negative than positive. So it makes sense to get rid of it until, like you said, there's contracts and people are locked in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, my personal take on spring games has always been that it's a bit superfluous, because I don't think it has all that much effect on what comes out of the fall roster and fall camp, because you have a whole new group of dudes that comes through, whether they're transfers or they're just a whole new recruiting class that the coach has spent months trying to recruit and get to campus. So they're obviously going to want to see how they perform, and they're obviously going to want to try and slot them in to try and develop them and get them on the field sooner than later. So I always thought the spring game was a little bit of a theatrical charade. But it was like that carrot at the or that pot of gold at the end of the road for a lot of guys who may be scrapping and fighting for a roster spot or a starting spot and so on and so forth. And it gave them an opportunity to at least fight and compete for it. And I think that's it. It's good to have guys, because football, as we've talked about before, it's hard to come back in the fall after you've spent so much time off, not tackling anybody, not being in that sort of contact mode. I think there needs to be spring ball, but it doesn't necessarily need to culminate in a game or what is a charade of a game.
Okay. I'm with you guys in this sense of like kind of the on the field stuff here and the results and kind of the risk reward here. But let me play devil's advocate a little bit, because we've kind of harped on college football changing a lot, maybe too much. I throw up this tweet right here. It says, canceling spring games is just another casualty in the national misunderstanding of college football. Elite fan events when done right. I am very, very worried. Look, people like to poke fun at the slippery slope fallacy and call it a fallacy. Slippery slope fallacy is not a fallacy. Okay. And we're on a slippery slope right now with college football, of it completely disintegrating. This cultural pillar of the United States that is, and I know I've said this before, but is uniquely special to American sports. And the spring game, although maybe it is superfluous and maybe does not benefit as much, or the risk reward value there is just not there. and I'm not mad necessarily about the spring game itself, but just okay, there's another thing of the college football that we knew in the college football culture. Okay, that's gone now. Also, it's getting more and more NFL, and when does it stop? I mean, they are now on the trajectory of just becoming a clone of the NFL.
I think it's too late. Once NIL was opened up, the floodgates are open. Now you're rolling down the hill and you're just trying to make whatever turns make sense at that moment. I think it's too late. I think it's bad for college football overall and bad for the product. But in terms of where the business is right now, it's the best decision for these programs, coaching wise, at least. So it makes
Mike,
sense.
It's called a slope, not a hill. Okay. So argument,
slippery mountain argument.
So your argument makes no sense now because you called it a hill. I know. It's just, I'm a free market guy. Okay. But we need a little bit of constraints here. We need a little bit of regulation in this because we're headed down a dangerous path.
Sure. And my personal take on the spring game doesn't necessarily negate the fact that I too find it a problem that the tradition of college sports is changing in this way. But it all stems like let's not treat the symptom in the spring game. Let's treat the actual problem and the core of it, which is NIL. So like the conversation about contracts and putting parameters on that will actually allow for the spring game to flourish in the way that it has in the past and present an opportunity for elite fans to enjoy it or have it be an elite fan event. But at the same time, like, look, we're in a vastly different world where it's like, okay, if we're going to make it all about the fan, then it's going to eventually circle back to NIL and how does the player who is putting on that event along with the coaches get compensated for that? And that's why the NIL is the core factor here. Not like let's go for that, not the symptom again.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. And it's not. I'm not saying that it's all about the fan, but I am pointing to the fact that in professional football, there's a distinct separation between team, players, and fans. There's a fence between them. But in college football, because those fans, many of them are alumni or people whose children go to the school or who are connected to people at the university, there's a blending. It is a community in a different way that it is in professional sports. And I mean, we're not going to ever go back to the spring game, even if they get contracts in place in a year or two and then have this structure to where players are actually protected and you can't poach them. Well, it's too late. They already got a taste of no spring game, and we actually like it this way. We're going to do it more OTAs in the spring, much more NFL style. It's going to be gone.
And this is an unintended consequence of what they deem to be a good for players. It actually is going to be a detriment to the overall culture and the overall community that was built from college football. And I think the NIL, a lot of people who implemented this didn't think through a lot of those unintended consequences. And it's hard to kind of game plan that out and strategize from that perspective because you don't know what you don't know until the ball's moving down that hill or slope.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's just one of those things. This is a casualty of what they intended to be a good, and there seems to be a lot of good things that are falling by the wayside because of the implementation of NIL and because it was implemented so haphazardly without sort of a solid game plan or strategy and approach to it.
I'm really worried, dude. I think right now, like this is all so new. And so the college football that we saw this year, for example, was like, oh, that's the college football that we know with some new elements. Okay. And the guys are getting paid. That doesn't really affect my viewership or my viewer experience as a viewer. And okay, we got a playoff format. That was cool, but it's USC, it's Notre Dame. And there's a lot of that here still. But what is this going to look like in 10 years? I'm so worried that we are going to get this strange semi-professional football league that does not carry any of those incredible traditions of college football in the past.
Yeah, I think it's a convergence of a lot of different things at the same time, which you're speaking to here. And like it's disingenuous to say that college football wasn't already a form of developmental league for the NFL. It was the only developmental league for the NFL, and they have been reaping the rewards and benefits of that. The NFL has for decades, and ever since their existence and inception. So I think this was ultimately always inevitable and going to happen, as the dollar amount and the the revenue for the NFL kept shooting up, and then you also saw it with the college sports shooting up, the implementation of all the TV deals and everything like that. This was an inevitable consequence, and the fact that people didn't see that or plan for it is what I'm most frustrated about, and just letting it loose. Like we're seeing the bad product of that right now.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a lot of just immediacy thinking, and now we're going. That's what I'm quite concerned, dude. We grew up watching college football. You know, all these Saturdays. This is like a huge part of my childhood. I'm sure your childhood too. And it's going to. Don't get me wrong. It's still fun right now. It's still cool because it's there's still a lot of those elements that are familiar and we recognize, but not sure where this is going to be going.
It's forever changed, forever different. We're living in a very different world. I mean, it's the same. We talk about like a society in general. We're experiencing this right now with AI. The future is very unknown as to how that's going to impact the economy, our individual lives, our family lives, so on and so forth. And like, how is that going to affect it? It's like at a very much lower level. That's the same thing with NIL and how it's affecting college sports right now. We see it. But we don't know what the future holds.
It's a great point, dude. This is a little bit off topic, but I always wonder, like things seem, it's like, it feels like unprecedented times right now with with a lot of things going on in the world with the AI and like, where are jobs going to go? How's this all going to look? And I wonder if we really are in these, or if every generation feels that. Did college football fans feel this, 30 years ago when they made some sort of changes, or when, it's 80 years ago when they implemented the forward pass? Like, do you think that we all just feel this, or we're in a especially crazy time?
I think that every generation thinks this. I just read this book, and it's about all the inventions that changed mankind, and it goes back from the Stone Age up until modern day. Every new thing, the printing press, sliced bread, whatever, all these new things, every generation goes, this is unprecedented. This is changing so fast. Whatever, the Model T, the car, I think every generation experiences this, and it's part of human nature to have a fearful, to find something that's going on right now and be fearful about where it's going to take us. And I just think that's human nature.
Yeah. Every generation has its version of this, as Mikey's speaking to here. I think the difference, though, is the exponential growth of those moments. It's compacting. So each time something like that is happening, there's less and less time in between those events. So it's just that timeline is that's why we're all feeling this pressure, as though we in our shoes right now are gonna. This is vastly different than anything else than say the printing press, because even when the printing press happened, it still took a very long time for that to really affect the entire globe. Whereas now it's literally at the drop of a hat, something can change and everyone feels it immediately.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you have like the automobile at the start of the 20th century. And then, 70 years later, we have personal computers. Then 30 years later, we have the internet. And then 10 years later, we have the iPhone. And then 7 years later, we have AI. It's just like it's contracting and getting quicker and quicker.
The way that everybody's connected right now, the same side of the coin where you're saying, okay, everything can change that quickly. The same pillars in place of everyone being connected and having phones and having this technology, everyone can adapt at the same rate, because the vessel of connectivity. I don't know how to say this.
I get what you're saying. Like if things
can
change for the worse just as quickly, they can change for the better just as quickly. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think one of the things we're really getting into here is like, has technology and the development of these pillar moments with the compacting amount of time or truncating of time there in which they happen, has it far outpaced our ability to adapt as humans, because it's happening so rapidly.
That's the thing. I don't think that my brain is developed to be scrolling Twitter and getting 1,000 different videos every single day and 100 text messages. I think my brain was supposed to be looking at trees and walking in the hills of the mountains. That's what my brain is adapted for. So, in conclusion, we got to get the spring games to come back. That's how you save college football. Thank you, everybody.
Save the world.
Save the world. Spring game's coming back. Matt Rule, reverse your decision. This is a sports podcast. Don't forget, viewers. Don't get confused. We will see you on Wednesday then. All right, everybody.